just to introduce myself, Pablo. I'm an aspiring token engineer. I try to make this field better and growing by making tokens useful and secure over time. And yeah, I think here in Tokenomics DAO, there's been a lot of talks about individual protocols, but I think Osmosis brought the idea with Cosmos of a blockchain not being only focused on the blockchain itself, also in the connections that it has in its surroundings. So today's talk is going to be a little bit about the Cosmos space, its app chain thesis, then of course Osmosis, the protocol itself, and layer one that involves, and at the end we will evaluate a little bit the tokenomics. So feel free to ask and interrupt me any single time. I will ask after every point finished anyway, in case anyone has any doubt. But otherwise, I think we can start. So for everyone that doesn't know what Cosmos is a decentralized network of independent parallel blockchains. So basically it's the infrastructure so that different blockchains can be built and they can connect with each other by using what's called the IBC, which is basically a standard bridge that has been proven to be quite secure and quite fast in general. The idea behind Cosmos is that, in contrary to Ethereum, which is working through layers, that all the security goes through Ethereum layer 1 and then goes to rollups, layer 2, layer 3, that are more specific and faster or whatever. It's based on the idea that there is no need to try to find the winner between blockchains, rather than the idea that in the future we will have an internet of blockchains. We will have a lot of blockchains that are very specific to the task that they are inquired, depending if they are a DeFi blockchain, if they are an NFT blockchain, a gaming blockchain, that will have its own parameter set. So it's about finding the proper structure, and by having its own blockchain, you increase their own sovereignty and it expands the future set. No? In this way, it's been said, at the beginning, there were some doubts, but right now, the future being as multi-chain and having an internet of blockchain is almost the main narrative that is running nowadays. There is even articles about how Unichain, so how Uniswap at the end will have its own chain. And we've seen with moves from exchanges like DYDX to Cosmos, how this is slowly being proven. And even Ethereum has a proof that by admitting that there will be, after the layer 2, there will be layer 3 that are going to be app chain specific. So app chain means that basically the whole blockchain is going to focus on one main product. And this makes it relevant because then the chain success is not only going to be dependent on how the quality of the product is, rather than because the bridge that entangles everything, that unites everything, which is the ABC, works it's limited. It has a certain individual connections. The chains that will survive and will maintain relevance over time will be the ones that are what is called a hub or a zone. So basically are this chains that have a lot of connections with each other. The original idea was to have the Cosmos hub as the main hub, and so far it's true, is the chain with most connections. But over time, they've realized that there is no need for only one main hub. Rather, they naturally, with something called the Schelling point, people naturally will have these hubs happening naturally. And I think the best analogy to find this is an airport. So imagine you have different airports that have a limited space for the aircraft, for having flights in and flights out. And so you need to choose where to go, right? So if you want to fly I'm from Spain, for example, if you want to fly from Malaga to New York, it's very difficult to find a direct flight. Rather, like it's very likely that like you will have to fly first to Madrid, a main hub, and then going from Madrid to New York, like the second hub. So in this way, this will work a little bit in Cosmos. If you have like a small chain, let's call it, I don't know, like Desmos right now, it's very likely that if you want to like transport, like you want to like make a chain transport of your tokens from Desmos to, let's say, another chain's injective, it's very likely that you need to pass by either the Cosmos app or another like chain as the intermediary like space for it. So the idea behind it is that, okay, so can we predict which are the chains that are going to become this Schelling point, these zones, these hubs? So naturally, they thought from the Osmosis team that an exchange, so a place where the users will like exchange their own tokens, and they wanted to do it natively, an exchange will be a natural like Schelling point for it. So people will want to have connections to the biggest DEX of the ecosystem so that they can find liquidity and like connections. Like, so in case you want to like exchange, let's say, the Desmos coin with a Juno coin, so you will probably have to go to Osmosis, and from Osmosis like exchange one from each other rather than having it directly. So this is the main idea. This is all called building decentralized mesh networks. So the whole idea of having like different zones, and it's the idea is that it's going to work because if, for example, the counterpart, like let's say Ethereum, that is not, it's not like a competitor, rather than other side of the coin, you sacrifice certain security that, for example, Ethereum layer 1 would give you, because these app chains will all have to take care of their own security, like by having their own validators and their own knowledge about like how to run like a blockchain. However, although the individual security is not guaranteed, like the survival of the blockchain technology as itself, it's more resilient because, for example, happened with the Terrafall. The Terrafall can have like certain like spread around Cosmos, but it will not kill Cosmos. If Ethereum layer 1, for whatever reason, it can be because it's not decentralized anymore and it gets centralized by certain actors, or there are like it gets obsolete, its technology or something like that. There is certain risk that this layer 3 and 4 of the chain might suffer certain consequences. Like with the idea of Cosmos, this security is assured. Is there any question about this?
So hold on one second. Let me just summarize.
Yeah.
Basically, I'm a little slow, so I'm gonna.
No worries. No worries.
I have to just thinking this through. So basically, you're starting with the Cosmos thesis, which is kind of the network of networks, right? Like a mesh, a mesh network, and basically trying to think through. And so this is where Osmosis comes in. Is like where are kind of the natural points in this network where I want to say people, but it's not really necessarily people. It's like where decisions are made, where transactions happen, like where these Schelling points, like these naturally emerging nodes, so to say. And I guess the thought is that Osmosis is one of these potentially, or they want to be one of these. Right?
Exactly, and they want to be one of this because they thought that like a DEX, so like an exchange, in the same way that it could be a NFT marketplace, or like in the future we will see different ones. It's one of these focus points that are at the end like users, like or like actors, or like whatever you want to call it, will find this Schelling point. So if you have like the Desmos like coin, and you cannot do anything in the Desmos, like with the Desmos coin without any exchange, either you build that exchange internally and you need to find a way that like other native coins want to build a bridge towards like Desmos, or you bring this coin to a hub, which is in this case Osmosis. So Osmosis was the first exchange that thought about this. Okay, now there are like more, but Osmosis was kind of like the pioneer about like how to visualize a future of, like you said, like a network of blockchains, and which are going to be the relevant ones. So in a way that it's not like the success of a chain or a protocol or a team is not dependent anymore only on the quality of the product, also the connections of it, right? So, for example, Uniswap is the exchange with highest liquidity. It's not anymore because they do the most improvements on the chain, rather than because they succeeded on the like they belong to the biggest chain, they have the biggest liquidity, so they have like the biggest connections. So that is the idea of Osmosis, but more related to different blockchains rather than to within one big blockchain. No, so that's more or less it. So once we know that, like we can think about the different layer ones that are going to be like successful, but like we are going to focus on this like an exchange. So what is Osmosis in general? Osmosis is a fully customizable AMM. So very inspired in Balancer. So it's an AMM in which you can basically build your own AMM, like your own pool. And you also have like a self-governing pool. So like those pools that you build, you can manage in the way that you want. You can create withdrawal fees. You can make the weights of each token like a different. You can have like 50-50, which is the regular one, or like 80-20, things like that. But the main idea is to have it as fully customizable as possible, so that you can build, for example, LBPs, which is one of the topics that we brought like a couple of weeks ago here also in the community talk. So ways to create launching methodologies for tokens like in the Cosmos ecosystem. This is just the start. The idea of like Osmosis is to become a full stack finance product. That's how they call it, in a way that they implement stable swap, they implement leverage, they implement all these kind of things that you can find in an exchange with full capability. And for that, they can make use of the ABC and the different chains that are building their own products, so that they can make collaborations. And one of the biggest example is how Mars Protocol, which is a leverage lending protocol that was built on Terra, moved to like be built on top of Osmosis. So in the moment that Mars like arrives, Osmosis in its own UX experience, will have like a leverage lending, like direct from that. Besides that, it has like two main innovative products that you barely can see anywhere. And these innovative products are related to the fact of how Cosmos is built. So the first one is the idea of Superfluid staking. And this staking procedure is basically a way to give liquidity. So you give liquidity to a pool, let's say Osmo Atom, for example, and you have the opportunity to lock your tokens for 14 days, and you do not only access to the rewards that are given to this pool, to Osmo Atom, you also give rewards for a stake in the token. Because whenever you put liquidity into Osmosis DEX, it creates a parallel synthetic Osmo that is going to be staked, and that gives you extra rewards. In this way, Osmosis has solved the idea, like the struggle that like users had, like choosing between giving liquidity or staking. Now they don't need to choose. Now they can secure the network and vote and participate while they are given liquidity. In this way, they are attracting liquidity. And it also becomes very, very, very useful, because with this idea, they also come with the idea that they can do a mesh security. They can do cross like staking procedures. They can, in the same way that is done with Osmo, that like you give liquidity with Osmo and you also receive staking rewards. Osmosis can charge a fee for all the tokens that want to do the same. So, for example, if you want to stake your atoms, but at the same time you want to give liquidity to Osmosis, you can do that. Like it's not activated yet, but you can do that. You can like give liquidity to Osmosis, and immediately it gets like a counterpart, like synthetic stakes. So you boost your rewards for your individuals, and it gives more security to the whole ecosystem of Cosmos. No? So these two have been quite innovative. That makes them up to date. There are more innovations coming, but anyways, that hasn't been enough in order to make Cosmos a very liquid place. In general, not many people know about Cosmos. I think after the Terrafall, it lost most of its liquidity. Basically, it went from billions, and I think it was in the top 5 DEXs. Now it's in the top 15, top 20, with only 170 million TVL. Yeah, in the moment that you have a DEX that depends not only on the liquidity, also on the connections as a layer 1, you do need to focus which are the connections that Osmosis has, right? And Osmosis is the chain with the Cosmos Hub that has the highest connections. It has I think it's connected to 49 chains, from which many are, for example, FMOS that is connected to the Ethereum. Other ones are Nomic, which is connected to a Bitcoin. So there are in general, Osmosis is very well positioned in order to succeed as a well-connected chain, so to become a hub that is being brought. However, on the other side, as we said, this upchain thesis has the downside that you need to build your own security, right? You need to create your own validators, and in Cosmos is normally limited to having 100 or to 200 validators. I think Osmosis has a maximum of 150 validators. And the reality is, although they have 150 active validators, only the top 10, I think, account for 40% of all the votes. And with only 7, so the Nakamoto coefficient, can take over the chain. So the decentralization of the chain, although it had a third drop, it's for the community, by the community, it's very threatened because users in general stake to the ones that give more security and have been staked the most. So with only 7 validators, you can basically own most of the votes. No? There are certain measures against it, for example, giving airdrops to people, to users that stake to outside the top 20, between the top 20 and the top 150. But these are very slow methodologies, and they have not been fully proven yet. Any questions about Osmosis and how it works with as a chain, as an DEX?
Yeah, guys, and if you want to follow along, I'm tweeting out some slides that Pablo has prepared for this. So just follow the tweets under the space. And then, yeah, and if I want to ask a question, feel free to raise your hand, and then we'll pull you up here on the stage. Pablo, what was the point with there's only 7? Can you please repeat that with the 7 validators? Yeah. Like, so basically, you were going from Osmosis having 49 connections to other protocols. So that's basically, it's one of these points that we were talking about before, where 49 blockchains essentially meet, right? So that sounds pretty incredible. But then how does this? I kind of didn't understand how you went then to the proof of stake and how it's securing itself, I guess.
Exactly.
With the
exactly. I made a little bit of a jump, like I forgot to clarify. All right, so we have like on one side how well connected it is in order to stay relevant. So like we have like yes, it's connected to 49 like chains, which is quite impressive, and it's only growing because almost every new chain wants to be connected to Osmosis. But then we also have on the other side the fact that in order to stay relevant and not be like dominated, but only a few validators, because the validator set is limited. So every Cosmos chain has between 100 and 175 validators, I think. So this is very risky because it has the chance of like becoming centralized, right? Like more than, for example, like Ethereum. Like why would someone build on Cosmos or up like on top of Osmosis in comparison to be built on a layer 3 of Ethereum? No, if the security in Ethereum is assured, because like the layer 1 of Ethereum is like proven to be like a relatively decentralized. No, if in Osmosis with only 7 validators, if they do any type of collusion, you can actually like take over the chain, right? But these 7 validators as a proof of stake mechanism, like which almost basically I think every Cosmos chain runs by a proof of stake mechanism, which I forgot to mention. With this proof of stake mechanism, it's in the power of users to decide who they give the validation to, right? Like they choose who are the validators, and the top 10 most of the times like owns like this 30-40% of the votes, like which is quite relevant. But like what is happening is through governance within the Cosmos ecosystem, they're trying to incentivize that people delegate, like users delegate to validators that have been proven to stay with the upside time like for like 100% almost without any slashing, and that they are outside these top 10 or top 20. So and they incentivize this by other chains, for example, offering airdrops. And this is very community thing. For example, if Celeste, like let's say Ethmos, for example, when they launched to they gave a big airdrop to the users that had like a certain staking on Osmosis, not only on Osmosis, also in the Cosmos Hub, like a different chains. But one of the key requirements was that it had to be outside certain conditions. For example, if someone stakes to the Binance chain, like to the Binance validator, which have been proven to barely vote, to be quite decentralized, to not like participate and not go in the interest of Cosmos, like those users that give their the staking to Binance, they will not get these airdrops, for example. You know? So I think it's quite interesting, like way to try to incentivize this decentralization in a certain way, because right now it's not in an ideal stage. Like right now, the decentralization metrics are relatively low. No? So that would be the explanation, more or less.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for elaborating. That makes sense.
Perfect. So the thing here is that once you have like a successful protocol, you have like a successful chain. However, we are here in the Tokenomics DAO. We're trying to evaluate what's the role of the token, and the native token in this case is Osmo. And Osmo was launched in what is called a fair drop. It was delivered to atom stakers and like to like certain active people that participated in the testnet and different things like that. So it gave like a big chunk already to I think it was like 5 to 10% to early users, and it has like a maximal supply of like 1 billion. Okay, it goes through a third scale, so it would be a similar concept like Bitcoin. So every year the inflation decreases by 1/3. Like it's a little bit different to like I think in Bitcoin is halvening and here is like thirdening. Basically, I think the first year they delivered like 300 million like tokens. I think the second year 200 million, and then 133, things like that. So this is a very like quick way of delivering all the tokens. In less than 6 years, more than 90% of the tokens will be delivered, and like the 90% of like the fully diluted market cap will be by that point, which is relatively early in comparison to other protocols, and that means that the price will very likely depreciate in the next few years. Like this is not an investment take, rather than like the growth rate needs to be so high to meet up like this inflation rate that is in comparison to other chains like or other tokens like a little bit different. And the token is basically used for 3 things. You know, it's on one side you can stake, you know, you secure the network. On the other side it's the main incentivized pool. So with Osmo, most of the incentivization that comes from the community pool go to pools that have like Osmo inside, Osmo Atom, Osmo Uno, Osmo Stars. So that's how the DEX is constructed a little bit, like with all these Osmo pools. And then at the same time, it's used for governance, right? Like it's for governance and and transaction fees around like not only the chain. So every chain, like every transaction you do in the blockchain is like using Osmo, but also with the IBC transfer. So whenever imagine you are in Desmos and you wanna like travel to Uno and you need to do it through the Osmosis chain, it's very likely that that the IBC transfer is going to be like in Osmo, or like you can select it always, but it's probably if you use a smart contract for it, like the default one is going to be Osmo. So the fees are going to the community pool, and then so the utility, we have like these 3. Then we have like the value capture on the other side. That is how does Osmosis become like profitable. And they charge a fee like almost every like DEX. I think it's 0.2, so quite a low fee for every transaction made. And they also charge a withdrawal fee whenever you want to take your liquidity out. This is like a good methodology if they manage to get highest activity, and they have the highest activity on Cosmos in general. However, it's nothing in comparison to, for example, the activity that you can find in Uniswap. And there's a long way to go. And also because the transaction fees are extremely low, you can even put them to 0, like at some point. So from that side, Osmosis is not a great value capture like a token in this aspect. No? Yeah. So to summarize in this aspect, sorry, yeah.
Pablo, we had a Florent come up on stage to ask a question.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, ma'am, my question is a bit about your point earlier about validator, just to confirm.
Yeah.
You are saying that basically they are all elected by the, I guess, people holding tokens. There's no randomization at all in the election process?
So right now they're trying to make quick buttons. For example, if you delegate with, instead of like the Kepler wallet, with something called the Station wallet, which is developed by Terra again, I think. They have a quick button that that you delegate to a validator that it's outside certain like like it has like certain parameters. So it goes to the outside the top 10 or something like that. So that is a quick, but normally every time that you stake, you choose the delegator, exactly. And by you choosing the delegator, you can see what are the fee that that validator will take over, the uptime that they have, and also how much of the voting power they have. So based on these three aspects, and also on the service they provide, there is something called stake to subscribe, which is some validators offer a special deal that if you validate with them, you have, for example, I don't know, premium access to a decentralized trading view, for example. You know, that is more or less how they promote themselves. Does that answer your question?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. So yeah, it really centralizes in a sense, even because the validators who have access to more, let's say, that can put their fees the lowest will have more votes. So basically, it's some kind of monopoly. Ends like monopoly. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's true that like that happens, but it's very rare to see delegators in the top 20 that have like a different, like many of them, they promote themselves by putting it by 3% or 1% for a while. Those are the ones that have like a big cash power, no? They're the ones that can actually survive. And this has been actually quite discussed in the Cosmos ecosystem. But when that happens, that really doesn't last, and most of them go at the end to 5%. It is a competitive free market, but at the same time, once you're in the top 10, every action that is not conscious, like users will be incentivized to get out of this top 10, like for delegating. And for example, many of them, if they are building their own chain, they first create, for example, Prism protocol is building now a chain, okay? And they are building a chain and they create a validator. And they like promoted themselves that saying that like, if you delegate with us, you will receive an airdrop, okay? In that way, they scale, so it becomes like still competitive. But if they would scale too much, they lose all the advantages of like having like the people that like stake with them would lose all the advantages of like receiving other types of errors. No, that's more or less how it works. But yeah, it is a current. I do think it's a current problem, like in general in the proof of stake process of Cosmos.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Very clear. Thanks.
Yeah. And yeah, I think the utility, like again, I think I will summarize again because I think I was a little bit messy about it. The utility of the token, it's to govern and to secure the chain and to give liquidity and to pay the transaction fees. And the way the protocol captures that fee is by having like captures that like revenue is by having like fees. However, these fees, like in general, like where the incentivation, when the community pool, so the governance of Osmosis is everything about like where do we deliver the incentives, right? And most of the incentives are going to the DEX, like which happens in most of the exchanges, like that most of the incentives are going to the exchange, and they go to the pools that have Osmo, as we said before. And they also receive bribes. So Osmosis also receive bribes from other chains in order to boost their own liquidity pool. For example, there is, imagine we already used Prism protocol. If Prism wants to have a pool that wants to become liquid, they send some tokens to the Osmosis community pool so that they can boost that specific like a pool for themselves, right? So in my opinion, that is very short-term sighted because the incentives will be gone at some point. So if you're dependent on having continuously, it's not only that the incentives like run out, it's also that the infrastructure of AMMs are not anymore nowadays dependent on the liquidity you have like on specific pools. So back in the days, the like Osmosis was built like only this type of AMM in which you had like this pairing with a native token, with Osmo Atom, Osmo USDC, Osmo Uno, all these things. They're like running away, and it's very likely that like if Osmosis wants to stay up to date in order for be capital efficient, they will have like a different structure of AMM. So although right now a lot of the Osmosis circulating market cap, I think we can see it in the graph of Mintscan that probably like Lobos have shared with you. It's locked. There's only at around 20% of the circulating supply. It's right now unlocked, and the rest is either staked or put as liquidity. And that has been managed because of the incentives. The yields in Osmosis are quite crazy, even like in this market, and the staking rewards are also like pretty high. Like, however, if they want to maintain certain relevance in terms of like being a protocol and like having Osmo as a relevant feature of the Cosmos ecosystem, they need to find a way to incentivize like Osmo holders and like in a better way, in my opinion, because otherwise it will just be a token that people buy to pay these transactions, and that will be it. The only incentives behind it is to want to govern the protocol, which for an individual user is normally not like extremely relevant, especially if you're going to delegate your vote to a validator, no? Yeah. And in that aspect, I conclude. I have more things to say in case like people are interested in innovations that are happening or more about the structure of the ecosystem. But from my side, I have nothing else to say. So I'm open to all the questions that might arise.
Yeah, great. Pablo, thank you so much for running us through that. Also, I was just tweeting out the second to the last slide, and of course linking to the Tokenomics hub, where you can also see the breakdown of the whole tokenomics for Osmosis. And yeah, anybody want to ask a question, please feel free to raise your hand and we'll get you up here on the stage. Yeah, I really enjoyed your presentation and your conclusion. So basically, great first mover with impressive infrastructure, and it's definitely becoming a hub. But the token lacks value capture, which might be a fatal flaw from like an investor's perspective.
Yeah. So exactly. So basically, like the Osmosis like chain and protocol, it's very likely that it will succeed. There are many protocols built on top, like that are being built on top. Like the finance product is getting up to date slowly, and it has like innovative products. However, the token is barely relevant right now. Like you don't align the protocol, like the protocol success with the token success, and that is an issue in the tokenomics design.
Yeah, what do you have some creative ideas how they could fix it?
So it's tough. I think it's tough. In general, for exchanges, it's quite tough. I think it's the same issue that like a Uniswap is suffering in this aspect. I think they would have to restructure how the AMM is constructed in order to allow it for something else. But maybe creating certain reputation systems between the network would help, like that are run by having like Osmo. So contributions, like giving yourself, like finding a different way in which you can grow, like in the Osmosis like ecosystem, like more like in the transitioning of a DAO, no? Like making like token, like the token rather than like a proof of stake token, rather than like making some kind of like a DAO token, no? I think that might be interesting. So that like people do not see like Osmosis just like as a transaction fee, also like a way to like get certain level. Imagine you find like you make certain developments that are relevant for Osmosis or something like that, and you get an NFT, like an NFT that is associated also by the amount of tokens that you hold, things like that. But in general, I think the tokenomics of exchange are in a crisis, because the VE model has been proven, like just with the curve wars, that at the end what you're doing is to kind of like create these intermediaries that, yes, you will get a lot of like value locked, but you will create this platform of bribes that are not necessarily, and this is what Balancer has done, right? Like the Balancer, which is basically their main competitor in Ethereum, has created its own VE like structure, and it has certain specific things. But I am not sure yet if that is the way to succeed. Like maybe having some indexes based on Osmo, something like that. I am not fully sure. Making a time-based token, maybe something like that, giving more governance power depending on the time that you stake it, something like that. You know? Yeah.
What about like just like a simple fee share model, so that token holders essentially earn a clean yield of some kind?
Yeah. So there is. Basically, because it's very decentralized and they're trying to build a very decentralized AMM that goes against the model itself. Because whenever you build your pool, you have a self-governing pool. So everyone that like puts liquidity into that pool is not only that they gain I think it's 90-something% of the fees. So they, of course, some fees go to Osmosis, but it's not only they gain a high degree of the fees, they also give them like the governance of it. So every pool is governed individually by the ones that are being given, they are giving like liquidity. So that idea of decentralization goes a little bit against this vertical integration to everything towards Osmo token holders. No, that's a little bit of an issue there.
I see. Okay. Anybody else have an idea how to fix it? Well, if not, Pablo, thank you so much. Yep. I thought it was super informative and very interesting. And yeah, any last words?
No.
Closing thoughts?
Thank you very much for listening. Anyone that is interested not only in the talk, but on Osmosis, like on Cosmos in general, on the tokenomics, feel free to DM me in general. Like I am very open to discuss about these things. And yeah, I wish you all the luck. And if you're building a protocol, please think a lot about the tokenomics before you launch it, because otherwise you can fuck up the investors quite a bit. All right.
Yeah, that's it. That's right. That's why Tokenomics DAO, I think, is going to have lots to do for a long time. And not just you can screw up your tokenomics, but also I think be open to that idea that it needs to evolve as your product evolves. I think that's like a super important piece of it. Yeah. But yeah, cool. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.